morning. How are you today? Yeah, I know. Let me get my shower, let me get dressed, and we'll get out of here. Daze with Jordan the Lion and this monkey begins now. Well, hello my friends, your old pal Jordan the Lion, and today's vlog is going to be a wacky one. This one actually is a true story, and if it wasn't happening in this town, I almost wouldn't believe it actually happened. This is a story that involves Joe DiMaggio, Frank Sinatra, and Marilyn Monroe. Let's go out to the park first, let Ja have some fun, and then we will go, and I'm going to tell you this wacky story. It's almost a scary story, but it's a pretty funny kind of out-of-this-world story, and you guys are going to love it. Let's get out of here. And today's vlog is going to be a special Patreon sunglasses vlog for Rita Fawcett. Rita, I hope you enjoy this vlog. Today I decided to take Ja to the West Hollywood Dog Park. It's kind of a different change of pace, and I want to start the vlog over in this side of the city. There's Groundlings. This is Melrose Avenue. We haven't been here in a while. The construction's making some headway. Okay, I don't know what's going on here, but there are a bunch of tents in that open grass area. I'm hoping they're not getting rid of the dog park or something. Oh yeah, they have pool exercise here. Well, Ja, no dog park. I don't know what's going on, but they have everything closed off. There's the park, but we'll have to find a different spot to go to today, bud. I am not having great luck with parks the last couple of days. They said that's not going to be open for another week or two. Oh, bummer. What a fail. We'll have to go find another park to hit up after the vlog's over. At the beginning of 1954, Marilyn Monroe was one of the biggest Hollywood stars in the world. She was a bombshell. She was married to an American baseball hero, Joe DiMaggio, and she would film the movie 7 Year Itch. Now, during that filming, we would get to see, or she would get to see anyway, the dark side of her husband, Joe DiMaggio, a very jealous man when it came to his wife, and they say that during the filming of 7 Year Itch in New York City, he was actually on hand for the famous wind blowing up her skirt scene, and they said that scene in particular, the filming of it and all the 5,000 spectators that were around hooting and hollering really got to him. And when they got back to the hotel that night, they had a pretty loud and some say violent argument. In fact, my friend Shelly Winters, who was friends with Marilyn Monroe, best friends in fact, and roommates, told me that was the reason they got a divorce, was because of his jealous and abusive behavior. In 1954, at the end of it, Marilyn would come back to Hollywood after the filming of 7 Year Itch, and she would file for divorce from Joe DiMaggio. Now, once Marilyn was granted her divorce, she moved into here. That year, she actually had 5 different addresses. She wouldn't even stay here very long, but she moved into the Brandon Hall Apartments, and one night decided to go visit a friend of hers that lived across town, who also took voice lessons from the same man that Marilyn took her voice lessons from. So Marilyn got in her white Cadillac and drove over to her friend's apartment. So now let's head over to the apartment building that Sheila Stewart lived in, where Marilyn went on November 5th in the evening to work on some vocal lessons. Now, this night became known as the Wrong Door Raid, and how this came about was that shortly before this, I mean, we're talking days, maybe a week or two before this, Marilyn Monroe has granted her divorce from Joe DiMaggio. Joe DiMaggio couldn't really accept that and hired a private investigator to find out. He was absolutely sure that Marilyn Monroe was cheating on him, and so he hired a man named Barney Raditsky to start following Marilyn around and tracing her every move so that they could catch her red-handed cheating on Joe. Now, it was this night in question that we're talking about, the evening of November 5th, that Joe DiMaggio and Frank Sinatra were out having dinner, throwing back a few drinks at an Italian restaurant, and got a phone call from Barney Raditsky saying that one of his associates that worked for him, Phil Irwin, had spotted Marilyn Monroe's Cadillac out in front of the building that we're going to see now. Joe DiMaggio flew into a jealous rage, and between Joe and Frank Sinatra, they amassed a gang of men and women to come out here and to do a raid to catch Marilyn red-handed. Now this has gone down, and I'm surprised it's not a more famous story as one of the all-time blunders in history when it comes to a jealous fit of rage, because what ended up happening was Joe DiMaggio and that crew, they said there were about 8 of them out here, including 2 of the men, both investigators' wives, came out here and saw Marilyn Monroe's white Cadillac parked right here. So this angry mob amassed right here on the corner of Waring and Kilkea to go in this building, and basically they had brought cameras and lights to catch her in the act. Now Marilyn, when she was here, Sheila was staying here in 8122. Now the reason that they flipped out and why they came out here is because, like I mentioned, Marilyn and Sheila shared the same vocal teacher. His name was Hal Schaefer, and Hal Schaefer is who Joe DiMaggio was absolutely convinced that Marilyn was having an affair with, and so he was going to come over here, break down the door, and get photos of Marilyn and basically try and destroy her reputation. What ended up happening is, instead of going into this door, they noticed there were 2 doors, and they didn't know which one was hers. So they accidentally went into this one. They went in through this side gate on the left, went around to the other entrance, broke into this poor 39-year-old woman who was asleep with curlers on, broke into her house with an axe, breaking glass, breaking the door down, came in and confronted her, and it wasn't Marilyn Monroe. They freaked out, took off, and because they had those lights shining in her face and the room was so dark, she was never able to know who broke into her house. Now this almost basically was forgotten about and went unreported. They had no leads, nothing to go on. And so for a year this was totally forgotten about, until an early version of a magazine quite similar to the National Enquirer called Confidential released an issue saying the real reason that Marilyn Monroe and Joe DiMaggio got divorced. And they had this story published in there, a story that no one knew any of the facts about. So that's basically what opened all this back up again, that they had this account to Confidential of basically who did it. They said that Joe DiMaggio and Frank Sinatra were involved, that there was a whole crowd out here, and why it was done. So they started an inquest and they started interviewing people, and they ended up talking to the woman that lived upstairs in the apartment upstairs. Guess what she said? Now the woman that lived up here said that she heard the commotion, looked out her window, and she said she saw Frank Sinatra. She said she couldn't mistake him, that she hated him, that he was a rat, and so she spotted him as being one of the people. They ended up eventually finding out that Barney Raditsky was involved, and started investigating this case and took it to trial. So during the testimony, Frank Sinatra actually said he had nothing to do with this, that he wasn't even here, and a couple of the other people that gave testimony said the same thing. However, Phil Irwin, who was one of the investigators for this, he was the associate, the junior associate, he actually said that Frank was involved in this. And the reason that we find out later this story came to light was because Joe DiMaggio never paid the bill for the private investigators. So in interviewed about it later, Phil Irwin said, well, it must have been Barney who sold the story to Confidential, because Frank wouldn't do it, Joe DiMaggio would never do it, and Barney said he himself, Phil said he himself didn't do it, but then later on it was discovered that Phil himself had sold it. In the end, everyone got off. There just wasn't enough to convict anyone, and ironically enough, Joe DiMaggio after this sought help with counseling, and it was rumored, and Shelley even told me the same thing, that right at the end of Marilyn's life that they had reconciled and that they had planned on getting married shortly following the days when Marilyn was found dead in her room. What a crazy story, huh? Frank Sinatra, Joe DiMaggio bust in here in a fit of rage to catch the #1 bombshell in the world cheating when she's not even married anymore, and make an all-time blunder by going in the wrong door. The wrong door raid. And of course, many of you may also know, because I vlogged it, that Joe DiMaggio had roses sent to Marilyn Monroe's grave every week for the rest of his life. Do you remember how I opened this video today? I said some things you just almost couldn't believe if they didn't happen in this town. This is a prime example. Originally, this was going to be tried as a burglary, but once the details started coming out, it was actually going to be considered a conspiracy to commit malicious mischief. So this could have been a big scandal for Frank Sinatra and Joe DiMaggio had they been convicted of this. And of course, Marilyn Monroe was requested to come and testify during this, but at the time she was already married to Arthur Miller and was filming The Prince and the Showgirl in London and never responded and never came. Out of all the crazy stories I've heard in my life and all the things I planned on vlogging, that was never one of them until Scott Michaels told me about that story the other day. Alright, I guess we're gonna take Ja over to Silver Lake Park. They like Ja. You are? You're enjoying the park? Look at that face. What a face! Well, park time's done. We finally got a little bit of playing in. He looks a lot happier. Someone lost their cheeseburger. That's a happy road sign. That is a new way of advertising. Well, Lionhearts, we're gonna call it a day because I have a date tonight and I don't want to vlog it. But I hope you guys enjoyed this crazy vlog, and Rita Fawcett, I hope you enjoyed your sunglasses vlog. Wrong door raid. What a story, huh? Who'd have thought? Have a great night, everyone. We will see you all tomorrow. Goodbye.